The sound of a single gunshot shattered the stillness of the Arizona dawn, sending a flock of startled birds into the crimson sky. Zara Oliver pressed herself against the rough bark of a cottonwood tree, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she clutched her swollen belly protectively. 6 months pregnant and running for her life. She had never imagined her 22nd year would find her like this, desperate, alone, and fleeing across the unforgiving terrain of the Arizona Territory in 1881. The last 3 days had been a blur of terror since she'd escaped from Edward, the man she had mistakenly married 8 months ago. His true nature had revealed itself shortly after their wedding day, when his charming facade crumbled to expose a violent, controlling man who viewed her as property rather than a wife. When she discovered she was carrying his child, she'd hoped the news might soften him. Instead, it had only fueled his possessiveness and rage. Zara's hand trembled as she pushed a strand of her copper hair back from her face. The bruise on her cheek had faded to a sickly yellow, but the memory of how it got there remained vivid. Edward had discovered the money she'd been secretly saving, and his fury had been swift and merciless. That night, as he lay in a drunken stupor, she had taken what little she could carry and fled into the darkness. Another gunshot, closer now. Zara pressed a hand to her mouth to stifle a sob. Edward had powerful friends in the mining company that essentially owned the town of Bisbee. She had hoped to make it to Old Tucson, where she had heard a distant cousin might be living, but now she feared she would never make it that far. The sound of approaching hoofbeats made her heart stutter. She had nowhere left to run, nowhere to hide in the sparse landscape. As the rider came into view, Zara's legs finally gave out and she sank to the dusty ground, too exhausted to continue. "Madam, are you all right?" The voice was deep but gentle, nothing like Edward's sharp tone. Zara looked up through tear-blurred eyes at the stranger on horseback. He had dismounted and approached slowly, hands visible to show he meant no harm. Tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of a summer sky, he looked every inch the frontier cowboy in his worn denim and dusty boots. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "He's coming. He'll kill me." The man's expression hardened as he took in her condition, the bruised face, the torn dress, and the unmistakable swell of her pregnancy. "Who's after you, madam?" he asked, crouching down to her level. "My husband," she said, the word bitter on her tongue. "Edward Blackwell." The man's eyes narrowed. "The mining foreman from Bisbee?" Zara nodded, fear clenching her heart. "You know him?" "Know of him," the man said grimly. "Nothing good." He glanced over his shoulder, then back at Zara. "I'm Adam Buchanan. I've got a ranch about 5 miles west of here. Can you ride?" Zara hesitated, uncertainty warring with desperation. I don't know you." Adam's expression softened. "No, you don't. And you've clearly learned the hard way not to trust easily. But those shots weren't from hunters, were they?" Another distant crack of gunfire answered his question. Zara flinched. "I can't leave you out here," Adam said firmly. "My horse can carry us both to safety, and then you can decide what you want to do next." The decision made itself as the sound of multiple riders grew closer. Adam helped her to her feet and guided her to his horse, a magnificent chestnut stallion that stood patiently as Adam lifted Zara into the saddle. He mounted behind her, one arm securely around her waist to steady her, careful not to press against her belly. "Hold on," he murmured, and then they were galloping across the open landscape, the wind whipping Zara's hair as they fled from the men who pursued her. By the time they reached Adam's ranch, the sun was high in the sky. The rocking bee sprawled across a verdant valley, a modest but well-maintained homestead with a main house, barn, and several outbuildings. As they approached, a young man ran out to meet them. "Ben," Adam called, Take care of Rusty. This lady needs help." The ranch hand, barely more than a boy, nodded without question and took the reins as Adam dismounted and helped Zara down. "Let's get you inside," he said, supporting her as they walked to the house. "My housekeeper, Mrs. Fletcher, will see to it you have everything you need." The interior of the ranch house was surprisingly comfortable, with solid furniture and colorful woven rugs softening the wooden floors. A plump, gray-haired woman emerged from what must have been the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Adam Buchanan, what's all this about?" she demanded, then stopped short when she saw Zara. Her expression immediately transformed from stern to concerned. "Oh, you poor dear. Come sit down before you fall down." Mrs. Fletcher bustled about, settling Zara on a sofa and bringing her a cup of tea and a plate of biscuits. Adam explained the situation in brief, hushed tones, and Mrs. Fletcher's face grew darker with each word. "That Edward Blackwell," she muttered. "Been hearing stories about him for years. Never thought I'd see the results of his cruelty firsthand." She patted Zara's hand. "You're safe here, child. The rocking bee isn't easy to find unless you know where you're looking." "I can't stay," Zara protested weakly. "I'll bring trouble to your door." Adam, who had been watching from the doorway, stepped forward. "Mrs. Oliver, Blackwell and his men won't be the first or last to try causing trouble at the rocking bee. We can handle ourselves." "Please call me Zara," she said, feeling oddly formal with this man who had risked himself to save her. "I'm grateful for your help, truly, but I need to reach Old Tucson." "I have family there at least. I hope I still do." Adam and Mrs. Fletcher exchanged a glance. "Old Tucson is still 2 days' ride from here," Adam said, "and in your condition." "The baby isn't due for another 3 months," Zara said, though even as she spoke, a wave of exhaustion washed over her. "Even so," Mrs. Fletcher cut in firmly, "you're not going anywhere until you've had proper rest and food. I won't hear another word about it." Too weary to argue further, Zara nodded. "Just for tonight, then." One night turned into 3 as Zara's body, pushed beyond its limits, demanded rest. The rocking bee proved to be a haven unlike any she had known before. Mrs. Fletcher mothered her relentlessly, ensuring she ate properly and rested often. Adam kept his distance, respectful of her space, but she often felt his eyes on her, watchful and protective. On the 4th morning, Zara woke to the sound of raised voices outside. She crept to the window and peered out to see Adam confronting a group of 4 men on horseback, one of whom she recognized with a jolt of terror as Edward's foreman, Clayton. "I'm telling you, Buchanan, we're just looking for a runaway wife," Clayton was saying, his hand resting too casually near his holstered pistol. "Blackwell's worried sick about her and the baby." Adam stood his ground, shotgun held loosely but ready at his side. "And I'm telling you, there's no woman here except my housekeeper, who's old enough to be your mother. You're welcome to water your horses at the creek, but then I expect you to move on." Clayton's eyes narrowed. "Blackwell won't be happy. He's got friends in high places, you know." "And I've got friends right here," Adam replied evenly, as several ranch hands casually appeared, each armed. "This is private property. Trespass at your own risk." For a tense moment, Zara thought violence would erupt in the yard. Then Clayton spat on the ground, wheeled his horse around and led his men away, but not before calling back, "This isn't over, Buchanan." When Adam returned to the house, his face was grim. Zara met him in the hallway, her hands twisting anxiously in her dress. "They'll be back," she said. "Edward won't give up." Adam nodded. "I know. Which is why we need to figure out a plan. Your cousin in Old Tucson, are you certain they'll take you in?" Zara hesitated. "Not certain, no. I haven't seen Cousin Martha since I was a child. She might not even remember me." Adam ran a hand through his son's streaked hair. "The territory judge is due in Old Tucson next week. If we could get you there, you might be able to file for divorce on grounds of cruelty." Divorce? The word felt foreign on Zara's tongue. "Is that even possible?" "It is," Adam said firmly. "Not common, but legal in the Arizona territory, especially in cases like yours. But Blackwell will fight it, and with his connections." "I have nothing," Zara said quietly. "No money, no proof except my word and these fading bruises." "You have me," Adam said simply. "I'll testify to finding you fleeing for your life, and Mrs. Fletcher can speak to your condition when you arrived." "Why would you do this?" Zara asked, searching his face. "You don't even know me." Something flickered in Adam's eyes. "Let's just say I've seen what men like Blackwell can do. And no woman deserves to live in fear, especially one expecting a child." Over the next few days, as they prepared for the journey to Old Tucson, Zara found herself drawn to the quiet strength of the rancher who had saved her. Adam Buchanan was unlike any man she had known before, steady, thoughtful, and unfailingly kind. He never raised his voice, never made demands, and treated his ranch hands with the same respect he showed to her. In the evenings, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the western sky, Adam told her about his life. How he had come to Arizona territory 10 years ago as a young man of 20, determined to build something that was his own. How he had worked cattle drives and saved every penny until he could buy this small piece of land. How year by year he had built the Rocking Bee into a modest but successful ranch. In return, Zara shared pieces of her own story. Her childhood in Missouri, the loss of her parents to influenza when she was 17, and her journey west with a family friend who had promised her a fresh start in Bisbee. How she had met Edward, who had seemed so charming and secure compared to her uncertain future. "I was naive," she admitted one evening, her hands resting on her growing belly. "I mistook his controlling nature for protectiveness. By the time I realized my mistake, it was too late. We were married and I was trapped." Adam's hand covered hers briefly, warm and reassuring. "You're not trapped anymore." The day before they were set to leave for Old Tucson, disaster struck. Zara was helping Mrs. Fletcher hang laundry when she spotted a cloud of dust on the horizon. Adam, who had been mending a fence nearby, was at her side in an instant, telescope in hand. "Riders," he confirmed grimly. "At least 10 of them, and they're coming fast." "Edward," Zara whispered, fear clutching at her throat. Adam nodded. "Looks that way. Mrs. Fletcher, get Zara inside and then find Ben. Tell him to gather the men." The next hour passed in a blur of activity as the ranch prepared for unwelcome visitors. Ranch hands secured the livestock and took up defensive positions. Mrs. Fletcher packed essential supplies in case they needed to flee. And Adam stood on the porch, watching the approaching riders with a calm that belied the gravity of the situation. When Edward Blackwell and his men rode into the yard, Zara watched from behind a curtained window, her heart pounding. Edward looked just as she remembered, handsome in a cold way, with sharp features and eyes that revealed nothing of his thoughts. He dismounted with fluid grace, brushing dust from his expensive coat. "Buchanan," he called out, his voice carrying across the yard. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." Adam stepped forward, shotgun still held loosely at his side. "I don't recall stealing any of your property, Blackwell." "My wife," Edward said, his tone hardening. "My pregnant wife. Clayton says you denied seeing her, but I have reliable information that she's here." "Your information is faulty," Adam replied evenly. Edward's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I don't think so. I've got a warrant from Judge Wilson." He pulled a folded paper from his coat. "For the return of my wife and unborn child to my custody." signed and sealed. So you can hand her over peacefully, or we can tear this place apart board by board." Zara's blood ran cold. Judge Wilson was one of Edward's closest allies in Bisbee, a man known for his malleable interpretation of the law when properly compensated. "That warrant isn't worth the paper it's written on outside of Bisbee," Adam countered. "This is Pima County, not Cochise. Are you refusing to comply with a legal document?" Edward's hand moved to rest on his holstered pistol. "I'm refusing to acknowledge a false claim," Adam said, his own stance shifting subtly. "And I'm telling you and your men to leave my property." The tension in the yard was thick enough to cut with a knife. Edward's men spread out, hands hovering near their weapons. Adam's ranch hands responded in kind, moving to cover their boss. "You're making a mistake, Buchanan," Edward said, his voice dropping dangerously. "A very costly mistake." "The only mistake here," came a new voice, "is thinking you can throw your weight around outside your own territory, Blackwell." A group of riders appeared from the east, led by a weathered man wearing a sheriff's badge. Relief flooded through Zara as she recognized Sheriff Davis from her few trips into the county seat. "Sheriff," Edward acknowledged tightly, "this is a private matter." "Not when you bring 10 armed men onto someone else's land," the sheriff countered. "What's going on here, Adam?" "Mr. Blackwell believes I'm harboring his wife," Adam explained. "He's brandishing a warrant from Judge Wilson of Bisbee." The sheriff held out his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Edward handed over the document. Sheriff Davis scanned it briefly before folding it and tucking it into his vest pocket. "This has no jurisdiction here, as I'm sure you know," he said to Edward. "If you have a legitimate claim, you can take it up with Judge Parker when he arrives in Old Tucson next week." "My wife is in danger of miscarrying my child," Edward insisted, his voice taking on a concerned tone that Zara knew all too well the public face he showed to the world. "I'm simply concerned for her welfare." "If that's true," the sheriff said, "then you'll have no problem waiting for proper legal proceedings. Now, I suggest you and your men turn around and head back to Bisbee, unless you'd like to spend some time in my jail for trespassing and intimidation." For a long moment, Edward didn't move. His eyes scanned the house, and Zara instinctively stepped back from the window, though she knew he couldn't see her through the curtain. "This isn't over," he finally said, his gaze fixed on Adam. "She's my wife, and that's my child she's carrying." "Then I'm sure the judge will sort it all out," Sheriff Davis replied. "In the meantime, you're leaving. Now." With barely contained fury, Edward mounted his horse. "You'll regret this, Buchanan. No one takes what's mine." As Edward and his men rode away, followed at a distance by the sheriff and his deputies, Zara sank into a chair, her legs suddenly unable to support her. The baby kicked vigorously, as if sensing her distress. "It's all right," she whispered, rubbing her belly. "We're safe for now." But for how long? Edward wouldn't give up, she knew that with bone-deep certainty, and now he knew where she was. The journey to Old Tucson suddenly seemed fraught with even more danger. When Adam entered the house, his face was etched with concern. "Are you all right?" Zara nodded, though she felt far from all right. "How did the sheriff know to come?" "Ben rode out last night when we first spotted Clayton's men watching the ranch," Adam explained. "I figured Blackwell wouldn't be far behind." "He'll try again," Zara said, voicing her fears. "The sheriff can't protect us forever." Adam sat beside her, his presence steady and reassuring. "Which is why we need to leave tonight, not tomorrow. Sheriff Davis will escort us partway to Old Tucson, and then we'll take a different route than planned. One Blackwell won't expect." "We?" Zara echoed, looking up at him. "I'm not letting you face this alone," Adam said firmly. "Not now." Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition of feelings that had been growing since that first day by the cottonwood tree. Zara found herself reaching for his hand, drawing strength from his unwavering support. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Adam's fingers tightened around hers. "We'll get through this, Zara, I promise." They departed the rocking bee under cover of darkness, traveling in a small wagon rather than on horseback, for Zara's comfort. Sheriff Davis and 2 deputies accompanied them for the first day's journey, while 3 of Adam's most trusted hands followed at a distance as additional protection. The route they took was arduous, winding through canyons and across streams to obscure their trail. By the second day, Zara was exhausted, the constant motion of the wagon taking a toll on her body. Adam made frequent stops to allow her to rest, his concern evident in every gentle touch and worried glance. "We can slow down," he offered during one such break, as they sat in the shade of a large mesquite tree. "Take an extra day if needed." Zara shook her head, determination straightening her spine. "No, the sooner we reach Old Tucson, the sooner we can petition the judge. I won't risk Edward getting there first." Adam studied her face. "You're the strongest woman I've ever met, Zara Oliver." A flush warmed her cheeks. "I don't feel strong. Most days I feel terrified." "Being afraid and being strong aren't mutually exclusive," Adam said, his voice soft. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward despite it." They made camp that night in a small box canyon, the wagon positioned to give Zara privacy while the men took turns standing watch. Unable to sleep despite her exhaustion, Zara sat wrapped in a blanket near the small fire, watching the flames dance against the darkness. Adam joined her after checking the perimeter, settling beside her with a sigh. "You should be resting." "So should you," she countered with a small smile. "Yet here we both are." Silence stretched between them, comfortable rather than awkward. Above, the desert sky blazed with stars, more than Zara had ever seen in her life. "I keep thinking about what Edward said," she finally admitted. "About the baby being his." Adam waited, allowing her to gather her thoughts. "Legally, he's right. This child I'm carrying is his by blood." Her hands cradled her belly protectively. "But in every way that matters, in love, in care, in wanting what's best for this innocent life, he's proven himself unworthy of being called a father." Adam's gaze was steady in the firelight. "A true father isn't made by blood alone. It's made by choice, by sacrifice, by putting someone else's needs before your own." "Did you learn that from your father?" Zara asked, curious about this aspect of Adam's past he had yet to share. A shadow crossed his face. "No, I learned it from watching my father fail at it. He was not a kind man. My mother took the brunt of his temper until she couldn't anymore. She took me and ran when I was 8 years old. Understanding dawned. That's why you helped me. You saw your mother in my situation." "Perhaps," Adam acknowledged, "but it was more than that. When I saw you by that tree, something inside me knew I couldn't ride past, couldn't leave you to face whatever was hunting you alone." Impulsively, Zara reached for his hand. "I'm glad you didn't." Adam's fingers intertwined with hers, warm and secure. "So am I." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken emotions. Then the baby kicked, a strong movement that Adam could feel where their hands rested against Zara's belly. His eyes widened in wonder. "That's quite a kick," he said, a smile tugging at his lips. "He or she has been restless lately," Zara said, returning his smile. "Especially when I'm anxious." "Then we should both try to rest," Adam suggested gently. "Tomorrow will be another long day." But rest proved elusive as the night wore on. Shortly after midnight, one of Adam's ranch hands returned from his watch with disturbing news. "Riders," he reported in a hushed voice. "Coming from the east, moving slow like they're tracking. Adam was immediately alert. How many? Hard to tell in the dark. Maybe 5 or 6. Adam made a quick decision. Wake the others. We need to move now while we still have the cover of darkness. Within minutes, the small camp was dismantled, all evidence of their presence erased as best they could. Zara found herself being helped into the wagon, fear making her movements clumsy. "What if it's not them?" she whispered to Adam as he checked the harness on the horses. "What if we're running for nothing? Better cautious than caught," Adam replied grimly. "And my men know their business. If they say someone's tracking us, I believe them." They set off into the night, the wagon's lanterns unlit to avoid detection. The going was treacherous, rough terrain navigated only by starlight, but Adam handled the team with skill born of years of experience. One ranch hand rode ahead as a scout, while the others flanked the wagon, alert for any sign of pursuit. Dawn found them in unfamiliar territory, at least to Zara. The landscape had changed, becoming more rugged and mountainous. "We're taking an old mining trail," Adam explained when she asked. "It adds miles to our journey, but it's less traveled and easier to defend if necessary." "How much longer to Old Tucson?" Zara's back ached from the constant jolting of the wagon, and exhaustion pulled at her like a physical weight. Adam's face was sympathetic. "Another day at least, maybe 2 at this pace. I'm sorry it's so rough going." "Don't apologize," Zara said quickly. "You're risking everything to help me." "Not everything," Adam corrected her. "And some things are worth the risk." The tender look he gave her sent warmth spreading through Zara's chest, despite her discomfort. In the short time she had known Adam Buchanan, he had shown her more kindness and respect than Edward had in their entire marriage. More than that, he had awakened feelings in her that she had thought died the first time Edward's hand struck her face: hope, trust, and something dangerously close to love. They stopped to rest the horses around midday in a sheltered grove beside a small stream. While the men tended to the animals and kept watch, Zara stretched her legs, walking along the water's edge to ease the stiffness in her back. The sound of approaching hoofbeats sent her scrambling back toward the camp, but it was only their scout returning, and his expression sent a chill down Zara's spine. "Riders coming up the trail," he reported to Adam. 6 of them, armed, Blackwell's leading them. Adam's face hardened. "How far behind?" "Less than an hour. They're pushing hard." Adam surveyed their position with a critical eye. "We can't outrun them, not with the wagon, and Zara can't ride horseback, not in her condition." "We could split up," one of the hands suggested. "Send Mrs. Oliver ahead with you while we hold them off." Adam shook his head. "Too risky. If they get past you, we'd be vulnerable." He turned to the scout. "There's an old line shack about 2 miles up this stream, if I remember right, used by the cattlemen during spring drives." The scout nodded. "I know it. Hasn't been used in years, but the walls were solid last I saw." "That's where we make our stand," Adam decided. "It's defensible and we can see them coming." He turned to Zara, his expression softening. "I'm sorry, this isn't what I planned." "None of this is what I planned," Zara replied, surprising herself with a small, wry smile despite the danger. "But I trust you, Adam." The abandoned line shack was exactly as the scout had described: small, weathered by the elements but solidly built of thick logs. It stood on a slight rise, offering a clear view of the surrounding terrain, with the stream running nearby and a corral for the horses. Adam and his men worked quickly to prepare their defenses, moving supplies from the wagon into the shack and positioning themselves for the coming confrontation. Zara found herself ushered inside, where Adam showed her a small root cellar beneath the floorboards. "If shooting starts," he instructed her, "you get in there and stay put until one of us comes for you." "I won't hide while you risk your lives for me," Zara protested. Adam's hands came to rest on her shoulders, his blue eyes intent on hers. "You're not just protecting yourself, Zara. You're protecting your child. Promise me you'll stay safe." Put that way, she couldn't refuse. "I promise." They didn't have long to wait. Less than an hour after reaching the shack, one of the men spotted dust on the trail behind them. "They're coming," he called, his voice low but carrying. "6 riders, just as we thought." Adam checked his Winchester one last time before moving to the window. "Let's hope they're willing to talk before things get ugly." Zara stood beside him, peering through the dusty glass as the riders approached. Edward was indeed at the lead, his posture rigid with anger even at a distance. Behind him rode Clayton and 4 other men she recognized from the mining company, all hired muscle known for their brutality. "That's far enough," Adam called out when the riders were within earshot. "State your business." Edward reined in his horse, his eyes scanning the shack and the armed men positioned around it. "You know my business, Buchanan. I've come for my wife." "Mrs. Oliver doesn't wish to return with you," Adam replied evenly. "And I don't blame her, given the state she was in when I found her." Edward's face darkened. "What happens between a man and his wife is private business. The law gives me the right to discipline my household as I see fit." "The law doesn't give you the right to beat a pregnant woman," Adam countered, his voice hard. "Or to chase her across the territory with armed men." "I'm losing patience," Edward snapped. "Send her out now or we're coming in to get her." "That would be unwise," Adam said, gesturing to his men, each of whom had a rifle trained on the riders. "You're outnumbered, Blackwell." Edward laughed, the sound chilling in its lack of humor. "Count again, Buchanan." From the brush on either side of the trail emerged more men, at least 8 of them, all armed. They must have circled around while Edward kept their attention focused on the main group. Zara felt the blood drain from her face as she realized they were now the ones outnumbered and surrounded. Adam's expression remained impassive, but she could sense the tension radiating from him. "Last chance," Edward called. "Send out my wife or we burn you out." Before Adam could respond, Zara stepped forward. "I'll speak to him." "Zara, no," Adam protested, reaching for her arm. She met his gaze steadily. "He won't leave without seeing me, and I won't have more blood shed because of me." Her hand moved to her belly. "Because of us." Adam's struggle was visible on his face, but after a long moment, he nodded reluctantly. "Stay on the porch. Don't get within grabbing distance." Zara moved to the door, her heart pounding but her resolve firm. As she stepped onto the porch, she felt rather than saw Adam position himself just inside the doorway, ready to pull her back if necessary. "Edward," she called, her voice stronger than she felt. Her husband's head snapped toward her, his eyes narrowing as he took in her appearance, the rounded belly now clearly visible beneath her dress, the healthy color in her cheeks that had been absent during their marriage. "You look well," he said, his tone conversational but with an undercurrent of menace. "Better than when you stole from me and ran away." "I took only what was rightfully mine," Zara replied, her hand instinctively moving to protect her child. "And I left because I feared for my life and the life of our baby." Edward's laugh was sharp, dramatic as always. "You need to come home now, Zara. This foolishness has gone on long enough." "I'm not going back with you," she said firmly. "I'm petitioning for divorce on grounds of cruelty. Judge Parker will hear my case in Old Tucson." For a moment, genuine shock crossed Edward's face, quickly replaced by cold fury. "No wife of mine will divorce me. Do you have any idea what that would do to my reputation, to my position in Bisbee?" "I don't care about your reputation," Zara replied, finding strength in speaking the truth at last. "I care about staying alive to raise my child." "My child," Edward corrected sharply, and you're not taking my heir anywhere." "The baby isn't born yet," Zara said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "And at the rate you were going, neither of us would have survived to see the birth." Edward's hand moved to his pistol, his face contorted with rage. "If I can't have you back, then no one will have you at all." Everything happened at once. Edward drew his weapon, aiming directly at Zara. Adam lunged forward, pulling her back as he fired his own pistol. Gunshots erupted from all directions as both sides opened fire simultaneously. Zara found herself being pushed to the floor inside the shack, Adam's body shielding hers as bullets splintered the wood around them. The noise was deafening, the crack of rifles, the shouts of men, the terrified whinnying of horses. "The cellar!" Adam yelled over the din, dragging her toward the trapdoor in the floor. Now, this time, Zara didn't argue. She allowed Adam to help her down into the dark space beneath the cabin, wincing as a particularly strong contraction seized her abdomen, not labor. She told herself desperately, just stress and fear making her muscles clench. "Stay here," Adam ordered, his face grim. "No matter what you hear. Promise me." "I promise," Zara whispered, clutching his hand briefly before he closed the trapdoor, leaving her in near darkness with only thin strips of light filtering through the floorboards above. The gunfight seemed to last an eternity. Zara huddled in the damp earth of the root cellar, hands pressed against her ears to muffle the terrible sounds from above. She could make out Adam's voice shouting orders, the reports of rifles being fired, and occasionally the thud of a body hitting the ground. Whose body, she couldn't know, and the uncertainty was almost worse than the noise. Then, abruptly, the shooting stopped. The silence that followed was somehow more terrifying than the cacophony that had preceded it. Zara held her breath, straining to hear any sound that might tell her what had happened, who had survived. Footsteps moved across the floor above her head, heavy and deliberate. A man's voice, not Adam's, spoke nearby. "Find her. She has to be here somewhere. Clayton." Zara recognized the foreman's drawling tone with a surge of terror. If Clayton was searching for her, did that mean Adam and his men had been overcome? Or worse, more footsteps, more voices. The sound of furniture being overturned, of doors being flung open. They were searching the shack methodically, and it wouldn't be long before they discovered the trapdoor. Zara pressed herself into the darkest corner of the cellar, desperately looking for any means of escape. There was none. The small space had only one entrance, the trapdoor above her head. She was trapped, and the baby chose that moment to kick vigorously, as if sensing her fear. "Check the floor," Clayton ordered. "These old line shacks sometimes have storage underneath." The footsteps came closer. Zara closed her eyes, offering a silent prayer for herself and her unborn child. Then the trapdoor was wrenched open, flooding the cellar with harsh light. "Well, well," Clayton sneered, peering down at her. "Look what we found." Rough hands reached down to drag her up. Zara struggled, but in her condition, she was no match for the strength of Edward's foreman. As she was pulled into the main room of the shack, her heart nearly stopped at the scene before her. Blood pooled on the rough wooden floor. Two of Adam's men lay motionless against the far wall. Of Adam himself, there was no sign, and Zara couldn't tell if that was a reason for hope or despair. "Where's Edward?" she managed to ask, her voice barely audible. Clayton's grip on her arm tightened painfully. "Your husband took a bullet in the shoulder. He's being tended to outside." His cruel smile widened. "But don't worry, he's still plenty able to deal with you when we get back to Bisbee." "I'm not going back," Zara said, summoning her last reserves of courage. "The judge will hear my case." "The judge won't be hearing anything from you," Clayton replied, dragging her toward the door. "By the time we reach Bisbee, you'll have had a tragic accident." Fell from your horse in your delicate condition. Such a shame." The cold calculation in his voice told Zara all she needed to know. Edward never intended for her to reach Bisbee alive. Only the baby mattered to him, his heir, his property, just as she had been until she fled. As Clayton forced her outside, Zara got her first glimpse of the aftermath of the gunfight. 3 of Edward's men lay dead in the dirt. Another sat propped against a tree, clutching a bleeding arm. Edward himself was mounted on his horse, his left shoulder roughly bandaged, his face a mask of pain and fury. Of Adam's other men there was no sign. Had they escaped? Been killed elsewhere on the property? And Adam, where was Adam? "Found her hiding in a root cellar," Clayton announced, shoving Zara forward. Edward's eyes bored into her. "You've caused me a great deal of trouble, wife. Expense, embarrassment, injury." He gestured to his wounded shoulder. "It will take time for me to decide on suitable punishment." "You'll never lay a hand on me again," Zara said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Or on this child." Edward laughed, the sound devoid of mirth. "Bold words from a woman with no options left." He nodded to Clayton. "Put her on the spare horse, tie her if necessary." Clayton began to drag her toward a saddled horse when a rifle shot cracked through the air. One of Edward's remaining men pitched forward into the dust, a bullet hole between his shoulders. "Let her go," came a voice from the trees, Adam's voice, rough with pain but unmistakable. Edward wheeled his horse around, scanning the tree line. "Buchanan, still alive, I see." "No thanks to your ambush," Adam replied. He emerged from the shadows, rifle held steady despite the blood staining his left side. "But your odds just got a lot worse." From different positions around the clearing, 3 more figures appeared, Adam's men, all armed and training their weapons on Edward and Clayton. "You're outnumbered now, Blackwell," Adam said calmly. "Let Mrs. Oliver go and you can ride out of here." Edward's face contorted with rage. "She's my wife." "Not for much longer," came another voice, and to Zara's astonishment, Sheriff Davis rode into the clearing, accompanied by several deputies. "Edward Blackwell, you're under arrest for assault, attempted murder, and crossing county lines with armed men to commit violence." For a moment it seemed Edward might order his remaining men to fight. His hand moved toward his holstered pistol, his eyes wild with fury and desperation. "Don't," Adam warned, his rifle unwavering. "It's over, Blackwell." Clayton, seeing which way the wind was blowing, abruptly released Zara's arm and raised his hands. "I was just following orders," he said quickly. "Mr. Blackwell insisted we come after his wife." With his loyal foreman turning on him and guns aimed from all sides, Edward finally accepted defeat. As the sheriff's men disarmed and bound him, he fixed Zara with a look of pure hatred. "This isn't over," he spat. "That's my child you're carrying, mine by right and by law." Adam moved to Zara's side, his arm slipping protectively around her waist. "The law may have something different to say about that," he replied evenly. "Once the judge hears how you treated its mother." As Edward was led away, still hurling threats and promises of retribution, Zara felt her legs give way beneath her. Adam caught her, supporting her weight despite his own injury. "Easy," he murmured. "It's over now, you're safe." "Your men," Zara began, remembering the still forms inside the shack. "Injured but alive," Adam assured her. "Sheriff Davis brought a doctor with him. They'll be all right." "How did the sheriff know to come?" Zara asked, allowing Adam to guide her to a seat on a fallen log. "I sent one of my men to find him as soon as we spotted Blackwell's scout yesterday," Adam explained. "Wasn't sure he'd get here in time, but I figured we needed all the help we could get." Sheriff Davis approached, his weathered face somber. "You two all right?" Adam nodded, though Zara could see the pain he was trying to hide. Nothing that won't heal. Thank you for coming, Sheriff. Glad I did, Davis replied. Blackwell's been throwing his weight around too long. About time someone stood up to him. He turned to Zara. Madam, I'll need your statement about what your husband did to you. For the judge. I'll tell him everything, Zara promised, her hand finding Adam's and holding tight. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. They returned to the rocking bee, where Zara insisted that Adam allow the doctor to properly tend to his gunshot wound, a clean shot through the flesh of his side that, while painful, had missed anything vital. The two injured ranch hands were similarly treated and put on the road to recovery. Sheriff Davis took detailed statements from Zara, Adam, and everyone else involved in the confrontation at the line shack. Edward and Clayton were held in the county jail, awaiting the circuit judge's arrival in Old Tucson. Word came that Edward was pulling every string he could reach, calling in favors from influential friends and business associates. But Sheriff Davis remained unmoved, particularly after examining the fading bruises on Zara's body and taking testimony from a doctor about the likely causes of her injuries. Judge Parker isn't a man who can be bought, the sheriff assured Zara during one of his visits to the ranch. And he takes a particularly dim view of men who abuse their wives. I think you'll find him sympathetic to your petition for divorce. As the date for the judge's arrival approached, Zara found herself increasingly anxious not about facing Edward in court, but about what would come after. The future stretched before her, full of uncertainty. Where would she go? How would she support herself and her child? Her cousin in Old Tucson remained her only tenuous connection, and even that was based on childhood memories. The evening before they were to travel to Old Tucson for the court hearing, Zara sat on the porch of the ranch house, watching the sunset paint the western sky in brilliant hues of orange and gold. Adam joined her, moving carefully to accommodate his healing wound. Nervous about tomorrow? He asked, settling into the chair beside hers. A little, Zara admitted. Not about seeing Edward. I think I'm past being afraid of him, more about what comes next. Adam was quiet for a moment, his gaze on the distant mountains. I've been thinking about that, he finally said. Oh. Zara turned to look at him, struck once again by the quiet strength in his features, the kindness in his blue eyes. I know we haven't known each other long, Adam began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. But these weeks have shown me more about you than some people learn in years of acquaintance. Your courage, your determination, your capacity for love despite everything you've endured. He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. Zara waited, her heart suddenly racing for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. What I'm trying to say, Adam continued, is that I care for you, Zara, deeply. More than I thought possible in such a short time, and if you were willing, if you thought you might someday feel the same. I already do, Zara whispered, tears blurring her vision. I've known it since that day by the cottonwood tree when you could have ridden past but chose to help a stranger instead. Adam's smile was like the sunrise, slow, warming, illuminating. He reached for her hand, his touch gentle but sure. I know you need time, he said. Time to heal, time to be free, and I'll give you all the time you need. But I want you to know that you have a place here if you want it. You and your baby both. Adam, Zara said, her voice catching. The baby isn't yours. It's Edward's child I'm carrying. Adam's expression didn't waver. I know whose blood runs in the child's veins, but that doesn't determine who will love them, raise them, teach them what it means to be a good person in this world. His hand moved to rest lightly on her belly. This baby will be mine too if you'll let me claim them, not by birth but by choice. Tears spilled freely down Zara's cheeks now, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. You would do that, take another man's child as your own. In a heartbeat, Adam replied without hesitation. Because this child is part of you, Zara, and because every child deserves to be loved, regardless of the circumstances of their birth. Zara leaned forward and for the first time pressed her lips to Adam's in a kiss that held all the promise of the future they might build together. When they finally parted, Adam's smile was tender, his eyes bright with emotion. "Is that a yes?" he asked softly. "It's a yes," Zara confirmed, her heart lighter than it had been in years. "For both of us." The courtroom in Old Tucson was packed to capacity when Zara's case was called. Judge Parker, a formidable man with piercing eyes and a reputation for fairness, listened intently as she recounted her marriage to Edward Blackwell, the initial charm that had given way to controlling behavior, the verbal abuse that escalated to physical violence, and finally, her desperate flight when she feared for her life and the life of her unborn child. Adam testified about finding her fleeing through the wilderness, her condition upon arrival at his ranch, and the subsequent pursuit and violent confrontation with Edward and his men. Sheriff Davis corroborated their accounts and presented evidence of Edward's intimidation tactics and disregard for the law. Edward, for his part, painted himself as a concerned husband whose volatile wife had run away with his unborn child. He spoke of Zara's delicate mental state during pregnancy, her irrational fears, and his own attempts to bring her safely home. But his carefully constructed narrative fell apart under Judge Parker's incisive questioning. When presented with the doctor's report on Zara's injuries, and confronted with inconsistencies in his own testimony, Edward's composure cracked, revealing glimpses of the rage that Zara had come to know all too well. The judge's ruling came swiftly and decisively. In the matter of Oliver versus Blackwell, this court finds sufficient evidence of cruelty to grant the petition for divorce. Furthermore, given the nature of the evidence and Mr. Blackwell's behavior both in and out of this courtroom, custody of the unborn child will be awarded solely to Mrs. Oliver. Edward's outraged shout echoed through the courtroom. "That's my child, my blood. You can't deny me my rights." Judge Parker's gavel came down with a sharp crack. "Mr. Blackwell, your rights were forfeit the moment you raised a hand to your pregnant wife. Consider yourself fortunate that I'm not adding additional charges of attempted murder based on the events at the Line Shack." As Edward was restrained by deputies, still shouting threats and obscenities, the judge leaned forward to address Zara directly. "Mrs. Oliver, you are free of your marriage bonds. Your former husband will have no legal claim to you or your child. He will, however, be required to provide financial support for the child's upbringing, to be paid through the court to avoid any direct contact between you." Zara nodded, tears of relief streaming down her face. "Thank you, Your Honor." Outside the courthouse, in the bright sunshine of an Arizona afternoon, Zara found herself surrounded by well-wishers Sheriff Davis and his deputies, Mrs. Fletcher, who had insisted on making the journey to Old Tucson, Adam's ranch hands who had stood by them through the danger, and even cousin Martha, who had indeed remembered Zara and had attended the hearing in support. But it was Adam's presence at her side that anchored her, his steady hand on her back reminding her that she was no longer alone in the world. "It's really over," she whispered, still hardly able to believe it. "I'm free." "Free to begin again," Adam agreed, his smile warming her heart. "To build the life you want for yourself and your child." "Our child," Zara corrected him softly, placing his hand on her belly where the baby kicked energetically, as if celebrating along with them. "If you meant what you said." Adam's eyes shone with emotion. "I meant every word. This baby will be mine too, in every way that matters." 3 months later, As the first snow dusted the mountains surrounding the rocking bee, Zara gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Adam was at her side throughout the long labor, his strength supporting her when her own began to falter, his encouragement urging her on. When the midwife placed the squalling infant in Zara's arms, she looked up to see tears in Adam's eyes matching her own. "He's perfect," Adam whispered, gently touching the baby's tiny hand. "Look what you did, Zara. Look at this miracle you brought into the world." Zara smiled through her exhaustion. "What we did. He's as much yours as mine now." The baby's eyes, still unfocused, seemed to search for the sound of their voices. His small fist wrapped around Adam's finger with surprising strength, and something in Adam's expression shifted, solidified a bond forming in that instant that no court or law could ever define. "What shall we call him?" Adam asked, his voice rough with emotion. "I was thinking Samuel," Zara replied, "after my father, Samuel Adam Buchanan." Adam looked up sharply. "Buchanan," Zara nodded. "If that's all right with you, I thought, since we're to be married next month." Adam's kiss was answer enough, tender and reverent as he cradled both her and the baby in his arms. "Samuel Adam Buchanan," he repeated, testing the name. "A fine name for a fine boy." As winter gave way to spring and spring blossomed into summer, the rocking bee thrived under the care of its expanded family. Adam and Zara were married in a simple ceremony at the ranch, with Samuel cradled in Mrs. Fletcher's arms as they spoke their vows beneath an arch of wildflowers. Word came that Edward Blackwell had left Bisbee, his reputation in tatters after the publicized divorce case and his subsequent arrest for the violence at the Line Shack. He had headed east, reportedly to try his luck in the silver mines of Colorado. The court-mandated support payments arrived regularly, though Adam insisted they be set aside in a trust for Samuel's future, as the ranch provided amply for their immediate needs. Zara found unexpected joy in ranch life. She planted a vegetable garden that soon became the envy of neighboring homesteads, learned to ride with a confidence she had never known before, and even took an interest in the bookkeeping aspects of the ranch business, discovering a natural aptitude for numbers that Adam was quick to encourage. But it was in motherhood that she found her greatest fulfillment. Samuel grew from a tiny, red-faced newborn into a curious, laughing infant whose smile could light up even the darkest winter day. And watching Adam with him, teaching him to clap his hands, carrying him on his shoulders to see the new calves, singing him to sleep with old trail songs, Zara knew that the bond between them was as real and true as any connection of blood could be. On the evening of Samuel's first birthday, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset that had become their nightly ritual, Adam turned to Zara with a familiar warmth in his eyes. "I have something to tell you," he said, reaching for her hand. "I received a letter today from the territorial office. The adoption papers have been approved. Samuel is legally a Buchanan now, in name and in law." Zara's breath caught. Though Edward had never contested the divorce or attempted to claim parental rights, the official recognition of Adam as Samuel's father was a final severing of the last ties to her former life. "That's wonderful news," she said, leaning against Adam's shoulder as they watched their son toddle unsteadily across the porch, chasing a butterfly with delighted determination. "There's more," Adam added, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "The doctor in town confirmed it yesterday. You're going to have another baby, Zara. Samuel will be a big brother come winter." Joy bloomed in Zara's heart, expanding to fill every corner of her being. "Really? You're certain?" Adam nodded, his smile as bright as the setting sun. "Doc says about 6 months along, so sometime in January we'll be welcoming another Buchanan into the world." Zara placed a hand on her still flat stomach, imagining the new life growing within a child born of the love she and Adam shared, a sibling for the son who had brought them together. "I never imagined I could be this happy," she confessed, tears of joy blurring the golden landscape before them. "When I was running that day, so afraid and alone, I couldn't see any future at all. And now we're building that future together day by day," Adam finished for her, his arm tightening around her shoulders. "You, me, Samuel, and this new little one on the way, our family." Samuel toddled back to them, arms outstretched demandingly. Adam scooped him up, settling the boy on his lap where he immediately began to play with the buttons on his father's shirt. "Da," Samuel announced proudly, one of the few words in his growing vocabulary. "That's right, son," Adam agreed, dropping a kiss on the child's dark curls. "I'm your da. Always will be." Zara watched them together, her heart full to overflowing with gratitude for the man who had not only saved her life, but had given her a new one, a life filled with love, security, and the promise of endless tomorrows as bright as the Arizona sun. In the soft twilight of the desert evening, with the man she loved and the child they both cherished, Zara Oliver Buchanan knew she had finally found her home. The years passed in a tapestry of moments, both ordinary and extraordinary. The winter after Samuel's first birthday brought not only a blizzard that would be talked about for generations, but also the birth of their daughter, Emma Rose Buchanan, whose arrival during the height of the storm required Adam to deliver her himself when the doctor couldn't make it through the snow-choked passes. 2 years later, twins Joshua and Jacob joined the family, doubling the joyful chaos of the Buchanan household and prompting an expansion of the ranch house to accommodate their growing numbers. Mrs. Fletcher, who had become more grandmother than housekeeper to the children, declared that the rocking bee was becoming more populous than Old Tucson itself, an exaggeration that nonetheless made Adam beam with pride. Through it all, Samuel remained special in a way that had nothing to do with his status as firstborn, and everything to do with the circumstances that had brought him into their lives. He grew into a thoughtful, compassionate boy with Zara's copper hair, and a quiet determination that reminded her sometimes, with a pang, of Edward. But any resemblance to his biological father ended there. In temperament and character, Samuel was his father's son, Adam's influence evident in his gentle handling of injured animals, his protective stance toward his younger siblings, and his unwavering honesty even when it would be easier to tell a convenient lie. On Samuel's 10th birthday, as the family celebrated with neighbors and friends at a grand picnic by the stream, Adam found Zara watching their eldest son teaching Emma how to skip stones across the water. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, slipping an arm around her waist. Zara leaned into him, still marveling at how perfectly they fit together after all these years. "I was just thinking about the day we met, how terrified I was, how certain that Edward would find me." "He never tried to contact Samuel," Adam noted, a question in his voice. It was a subject they rarely discussed, by unspoken agreement. "No," Zara confirmed. "The support payments stopped coming 5 years ago. Sheriff Davis heard he died in a mining accident in Colorado." She was silent for a moment, watching Samuel laugh as one of Emma's stones skipped 3 times before sinking. "I don't know if I'm supposed to feel something about that. Sadness, maybe, or relief, but all I feel is nothing, as if he was a character in a story someone told me long ago." Adam nodded, understanding as always. "Samuel doesn't remember him at all." "No, and I'm grateful for that," Zara said. "You're the only father he's ever known, the only father he'll ever need." They watched as their 4 children engaged in an impromptu race along the bank, Samuel deliberately slowing his pace to let the younger ones keep up, his face alight with the simple joy of the moment. "He's going to be a fine man someday," Adam said, pride evident in his voice. "He already is," Zara replied softly, "because he had the finest example to follow." Later that evening, after the guests had departed and the younger children were tucked into bed, Samuel approached his parents on the porch where they sat enjoying the peace of a summer night. "Pa," he said hesitantly, "can I ask you something?" Adam motioned for the boy to join them. "Of course, son. What's on your mind?" Samuel settled onto the step at their feet, his young face serious in the fading light. "Tommy Wilson said something today at the picnic. About me not being your real son." Zara felt her heart clench, but Adam's expression remained calm. "And what did you say to that?" Samuel shrugged. "I told him he was wrong, that you're my pa and that's all there is to it." He hesitated, then asked the question that had clearly been troubling him. "But is that true? Am I your real son?" Adam exchanged a glance with Zara, then patted the space beside him on the porch swing. Samuel rose and sat between them, suddenly seeming younger than his 10 years. "Samuel," Adam said gently, "you were growing in your mother's belly when I first met her. Another man helped create you, that's true. But from the moment I saw you, red-faced and squalling in your mother's arms, you were mine. Mine to love, mine to raise, mine to be proud of." He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Being a father isn't about whose blood runs in your veins. It's about who loves you, who guides you, who would do anything to keep you safe and help you grow into the person you're meant to be. So I'm yours, but not by birth." Samuel asked, working through the concept. Adam nodded. "By choice, not by chance, and in my book that's the stronger claim." Samuel was quiet for a moment, absorbing this. Then he looked up, his expression clearing. "Like how you chose the rocking bee instead of inheriting it. You always say that means it's more yours than if someone had just given it to you." Adam smiled, ruffling the boy's hair. "That's right, smart as a whip, just like your mother." "Does this mean I have another father somewhere?" Samuel asked, curiosity now replacing concern. Zara took her son's hand. "The man who helped create you died many years ago, Samuel. He wasn't a kind man and he hurt me very badly. That's why I left him before you were born." "And then Pa found you," Samuel said, fitting the pieces together. "He did," Zara confirmed, her eyes meeting Adam's over their son's head. "He saved both of us, really." Samuel nodded, seemingly satisfied with this explanation. "So the twins and Emma are Pa's by birth, but I'm his by choice." "That's right," Adam said. "And I want you to know something important, Samuel. I have never, not for one single moment, loved you any differently than I love your brothers and sister. You're all my children, equally and completely." The boy's face broke into a smile, the worry that had shadowed him all evening finally lifting. "I love you too, Pa, and I'm glad you chose me." As Samuel headed inside to bed, his steps lighter than when he had approached them, Zara leaned against Adam's shoulder, overwhelmed once again by the depth of her love for this man, who had not only kept his promise to claim her son as his own, but had fulfilled that promise every day for the past decade. "Thank you," she whispered. Adam pressed a kiss to her temple. "For what?" "For everything," Zara replied simply. "For being the man you are, for giving Samuel the father every child deserves, for giving me the life I never dared to dream of." "I think we gave that to each other," Adam said, his voice warm in the gathering darkness. "And we're still building it day by day." As the stars emerged in the vast Arizona sky above the rocking bee, Zara Oliver Buchanan knew with absolute certainty that the frightened young woman who had once hidden behind a cottonwood tree, desperate and alone, could never have imagined the fullness of the life that awaited her. A life not without challenges, droughts and blizzards, illness and injury, the ordinary difficulties of raising four spirited children, but a life rich beyond measure in the things that truly mattered: love, family, and the knowledge that she belonged, heart and soul, to this land and to the man beside her. In the end, what had begun as a desperate flight from danger had become a journey home, not to a place she had known before, but to the place and the people she had always been meant to find.